Hello and welcome to episode 8 of our journey through William Shakespeare's Macbeth. Last time we saw Duncan arrive at Macbeth's peaceful castle, and we watched on as Duncan lavished praise upon he and his wife Lady Macbeth. We then saw Lady Macbeth lead Duncan away into the castle and toward his possible death. Today we arrive at the end of Act 1. It is Act 1, Scene 7, the aftermath of a great party. It is the deepest night, everyone is abed, and Macbeth is about to have a crisis of moral conscience. A reminder on annotations: I will be annotating general plot points in green, contextual factors in blue, and writer's craft in red. We start with Macbeth in darkness and alone on stage. A visual metaphor for his feelings at this point, perhaps. He wants the act to be done quickly. A link to his military past, where death is done quickly and then forgotten. However, he finds himself in the political world now, where actions have lingering consequences. There's that repetition of the word done to emphasise how desperate he is for this whole act to be over with. It's another audible link back to the done sound and the idea of fated acts that we've discussed previously. He then goes on to reveal his worries. He's not scared of the act itself, he's killed before, remember, but he is scared of the political consequences. We've seen MacDonald executed for treason already in the play, and Macbeth knows that would be his fate as well if he were to be caught. That's followed by more on consequences. Violence will lead to violence, blood will lead to blood, an idea that is discussed by both Macbeth and Lady Macbeth later. Shakespeare potentially foreshadows the guilt that will follow. The motif of blood, remember, is closely linked to the idea of guilt. This speech is really interesting, actually. Macbeth then moves on to talk about how the actions done by a perpetrator will be done to them in return. He who murders, for example, will be killed. Also, possibly, he who consorts with the supernatural will be brought down by the supernatural. There's a real conflict in Macbeth at this point. He wants to seize the crown, but he already feels guilt for what he's planning to do. The irony of the situation isn't lost on him. He should be loyal to Duncan. He should be protecting him, not be the murderer. There's a triplet in here as well, a link back to the idea of the number 3, which we've already seen linked really closely to the supernatural. We then immediately follow that subtle callback to the supernatural with some explicit addressing of the great chain of being. Whoever would cross Duncan would be damned because he is God's representative on earth, but also because he's such a kind and generous king. More on God then, some imagery here relating to God and to new life. Then a reinforcement that everyone would be devastated by the news that Duncan had been killed. We're really building up the evilness of the deed that Macbeth and Lady Macbeth are plotting. In the space of Act 1, we've gone from Macbeth being a brave hero to an evil potential murderer. Shakespeare flits between religion and the supernatural throughout this section of speech. The next bit's a link back to the witches and weather. It's also a paradox, as tears cannot drown the wind. It's impossible. Perhaps Shakespeare's hinting at the subversion to nature that killing Duncan would lead to. Then there's an interesting link to Machiavelli to possibly discuss here. Machiavelli was an Italian diplomat and philosopher, most famous for his political writing The Prince, which was written in 1513. He proposed that immoral behaviour, such as lying and the murder of innocents, was normal and was effective in politics. Macbeth here recognises and admits that the only driving force that he has is political ambition. When Lady Macbeth arrives, there's an exchange between them that is littered with questions. They question each other around the plan and around the location of Duncan, showing the uncertainty that they both feel at this point. Lady Macbeth is very much in control here, though. She scolds Macbeth and really establishes herself as the authority in this plot, and also in their wider relationship. I wonder if this presentation is an exploration on the gender stereotypes at the time, or if it's a warning to women not to strive for more than they should have, or possibly it's just to make the audience dislike her as a character. There's a divide between them here, potentially painting Macbeth as more of a tragic hero than a complete villain. He realises and vocalises how kindly Duncan has treated him, and he demands that they will proceed no further with the plan. He's also intelligent at this point. He realises that he's currently held in high regard due to his actions in battle. He believes that it's this that they should leverage in order to progress politically, rather than killing Duncan. Shakespeare uses a lot of questions again throughout this scene, this time in order to showcase the divide between Macbeth and his wife. Here she compares him to an overly ambitious drunk who's got big plans when he's under the influence of alcohol, but then doesn't have the courage or the drive to act upon them the following day. There's another link to clothing as well. Remember, we've mentioned borrowed robes and robes being too large previously. Clothing represents status here. Then she starts to manipulate him further. Her previous approach of questioning and insulting him hasn't worked, so she moves on to question whether he even loves her. Then some emasculation. She accepts that Macbeth has the ambition and desire required, but questions why he is so scared to seize what is said to be his. She says this decision will shape the rest of his life, and she's right, but focuses on what he will be if he refuses, an honourable coward. And that point is hammered home with an old saying, literally the cat would eat the fish, but it doesn't want to get its feet wet. Macbeth interrupts at this point. He's heard enough. Shakespeare uses alliteration and an imperative here to show the desperation that he feels. He needs Lady Macbeth to stop. He begs her to stop tormenting him. He knows what will happen if she doesn't stop. This shows his lack of power and control, mainly over himself and his actions here. Then the next bit is a really clear link to the supernatural and also to the idea of masculinity and manhood. Macbeth states that he is a man, responding to Lady Macbeth's emasculation of him. But he also states that no man could commit the crime they are planning. No man could commit regicide. It is the crime of a beast. It is inhumane. Shakespeare's repetition of the word dare is really clever as well. It shows the size of the task ahead. Like if you dared to do something that you really don't want to do, and then your friends repeat the dare over and over again until you crack and give in, or you just storm away and refuse. However, she doesn't stop. She drives on with her torment of her husband. Macbeth has vocalised another command which has been ignored. Maybe he isn't as powerful as he thinks he is. She is determined to break his will. She links the idea of power to masculinity again here, showing how clear she is about the gender roles that she herself is rejecting. Does this perhaps make her rejection of the more powerful? She knows exactly what a woman should be, but she's refusing that entirely. Then we've got another link to nature through breastfeeding at this point. She addresses a child of her own. She has breastfed a baby. We can assume that baby has died. But this wouldn't be too surprising for the audience, as child mortality rates were particularly high at the time. However, this brief show of tenderness is immediately dashed, as she describes the violent way that she would kill a child if she had promised Macbeth that she would. Similar to him promising her he would commit regicide. However, he seems to be going back on the promise at this point. Children are pure, and perhaps the close link to God purifies the king in some way. So that's the same sort of premise of killing a pure, innocent baby and killing a pure, innocent king. Then there's a short question from Macbeth. Shakespeare does this in order to show his uncertainty. His state of mind is being challenged and he is close to giving in. Lady Macbeth responds with an exclamative. Her next sentence is then filled with sibilants, just to emphasise the fact that she is the serpent again, pouring her poison into Macbeth's ears. If he believes her, if he believes in her plan, then they cannot fail. She then moves on to discuss Duncan's sound sleep, a hint at the plan to kill him while he sleeps, but also a clever contrast to the broken sleep that Macbeth and Lady Macbeth will be cursed with following the murder. She will drug the guards' drinks in order to knock them out. Then there will be nothing standing in between Macbeth and Duncan's sleeping body. It will be easy for him. She has thought of everything. All that he needs to do is go in and commit the act. Macbeth claims that his wife rejects female characteristics, just vocalising the impression that the audience would have already built of her. She is so masculine that in her future she should only give birth to males. There's more on that idea of what masculinity is here. Males should be powerful, ambitious, intelligent and capable of cruelty, just like Lady Macbeth is. But she's focused. She's only interested in the plan. She knows that someone will have to take the blame and that it is them who must frame these people. She says they will cover the guards in the blood of Duncan to make it look like it is them who have gone in and killed the king while he sleeps. He's settled. It has worked. He knows how terrible the act he will commit is, but he will do it. Is he doing it for her? Potentially, I think. Is she manipulating him for her own good, or is she just encouraging her husband to seize what is his? Is she the manipulative snake, or is she just a supportive, loving wife? We've seen a host of questions throughout this scene, but there are none here, not one. There's no doubt left in Macbeth's mind. Shakespeare shows us just how effective Lady Macbeth's tirade has been. He's absolutely convinced. He will proceed with the plan. Duncan is not long for this world. He then echoes Lady Macbeth. They must appear to be good and fair. They must hide their true selves, appearance and reality again. Shakespeare then ends the scene on a rhyming couplet to emphasise the importance of both the decision that he's made and of what Macbeth says next. They cannot get caught or even be suspected. They must hide themselves to see this through. He seems to be telling Lady Macbeth what to do here, even though we've just seen her emasculate and manipulate him constantly throughout this scene pretty much. There's really a pattern developing of Macbeth believing that he's in control of these powerful women, in Lady Macbeth's case, or beings that appear to be similar to women in the case of the witches, while in reality these women are manipulating him. That again could be a comment on masculinity and society's expectations of what a man should be. It could also be addressing Macbeth's hubris, the fact that he believes anyone and everyone should obey him without question. That's potentially a result of his military position and the respect he's been held on the battlefield. And then Act 1 ends on that point. Macbeth begins his journey to Duncan's chamber to go against God and kill the king. He's about to grab power for he and his wife. They will be in complete control and they will have everything they have ever wanted. But the witches are watching, and God is always watching. If you've got any extra notes that you think would be useful at this point, please add them onto your scripts and feel free to add them in the comment section below. We're at the end of Act 1 now, and I'd like to see how you feel about the characters and about how the plot is progressing. And also, please don't forget to like, share and subscribe to the channel. You can find us over on Instagram at OpenBookPC. I'll see you next time at the start of Act 2 and in the depths of night for some hallucinations, some self-doubt and some murderous intent in Act 2, Scene 1.